So first, we're going to hear from Daniel Close, all about industry resumes. So Daniel is the Assistant Director of Career Services for BioKansas, and the mission of BioKansas is to lead the effort of supporting and growing Kansas's bioscience ecosystem, including bioscience research, commercialization, training, and business development. The organization is committed to advancing the careers of early career scientists and established professionals, and engages with institutions of higher education and working professionals to provide training and courses for diverse skills development. With that, we'll pass it over to Daniel.
Glad you read that off because I always fumble all over our own mission statement, so I appreciate it. I'm going to turn this on, even though I usually don't need a mic. Can everyone hear me all right? Awesome. Okay. So let's start with a really easy question. How many have a resume? How many have a CV? How many have a good resume? Yeah. That's the question that I love to ask because resumes are tricky. If you don't know what should go in them, how it should go in them, what should be removed, when it should be added, taken out, all of that fun stuff, resumes can be really tricky. So I am going to start off with a series of questions just because I like interaction. So please feel free to answer. But real quick, again, my name is Daniel Folk. I'm the Assistant Director of Career Services. So my background is I got a degree in mental health counseling. And during that time, I actually got a chance to do career counseling. Absolutely fell in love with it because I didn't just have to listen to people, I could tell them what to do as well. But career, really, I found kind of a nerdy area I like to see why people do what they do. And so I was a career counselor for about 6 years, and then I got into employer relations. The important part about knowing that is I've gotten to see everything from a student perspective to an employer perspective and where those disconnects are and how your skills can be translated to them and what they're looking for that you already have. It's just, can you communicate that to them? Yeah? All right. So first question, resumes and CVs are interchangeable. Yes or no? All right, I'm getting a majority no's. I'm happy about that. So that is false. Many people think they are interchangeable and they'll see it in a job advertisement and it'll say, please upload a CV and cover letter. Well, if you upload a resume when they were looking for a CV, they're going to be greatly disappointed because you're not showing them a whole breadth of experience or depth of experience. But on the other hand, if you submit a CV when they're actually looking for a resume, they're also going to be greatly disappointed because they're not getting at what they're needing to know right off the bat. These are very different documents. What is the difference between a CV and a resume? Can anyone tell me? There's a lot of them. You're welcome to throw out anything.
One of them is short and the other one basically have everything about you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's pretty much the key to what the difference between a resume and a CV is. I think of it in 3 different areas: length, organization, and application. So length, a CV is kind of a repository of everything you've ever done in your academic and professional life. Once you're in college, you're all well beyond high school. So high school is completely gone off of a CV. And now we're into who are you as a professional. However, in a resume, it's very specialized. From an employer perspective, what do I need to know about you? And that's it. I don't need all the extra stuff. From an organization perspective, how it's put together. A CV is typically in kind of chronological order. You add it as you get that experience, and that's how a lot of the sections are set up and everything. Whereas a resume is relevance. It is ordered by relevance. What is important to get me this position? And then within each of those sections, everything's in reverse chronological order. So most recent to oldest within each section. Application, when to use the other. CVs are typically used in higher education, in government positions, and in some nonprofit roles. Most are still looking for a resume, but some nonprofit roles. Where, I did say CVs, right? Yeah. Whereas a resume, industry is almost always going to be looking for a resume. There are some senior scientist roles that are looking for a repository of your scientific work. So sometimes you will see a CV requested, but a lot of times it's actually, they'll request a resume and then supplementary documentation of like publications, research. So that's kind of a separate section. So always look at what they're actually asking for. Okay, we're talking about resumes. So how long is a resume? How many numbers did you give me?
2 pages.
2 pages, saw 1 page. Some nods at the 1 page. Okay, this is kind of a tricky one. Resumes are 2 pages max ever. They should never go beyond 2 pages. If it does, you don't have a resume anymore. Now you're working on a CV. But for everyone here, more than likely, unless you have the general number, this is general, I promise. Unless you have 7 years of relevant work experience, this is actually doing what you're getting a degree to do, or the industry that you're getting into, you get 1 page. I've been in this industry for longer than that. Mine's still 1 page. It actually shows a lot that you can be succinct enough to showcase why I'm the best fit for this position in 1 page. Oh, look at that, I answered my own question. Okay, publications. Do you put them on your resume? See some heads nodding or shaking now. Some yes. Okay, this is a kind of a tricky one. I don't want to see all of your publications on your resume. That's not what a resume is for. How many pages? 1. That's valuable real estate. To take up half or your whole page with publications is a waste of space. However, there are some of your publications that are directly related to what you want to do. Maybe you're directly using instrumentation that you're going to be using at this company. I'm going to put in that one. And I'm going to call it featured publications. So maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most. But I'm not going to take up too much space on my resume because it's not actually building too much of a profile. It's just kind of taking up space because you don't even get to really describe that research in too much detail. So that's why I said that it's a trick question, because it's not a no, it's a maybe, but it's not all of them for sure. Okay, so some pro tips, things to think about. A resume should always be tailored to that position, which means you have to change it every single time. Does that scare anyone? Yeah, that sounds like a lot, right? A whole lot of work. That does not mean that everything in your resume has to change. That just means you have to make it for that specific job. So where are they hiding all of the information that they're looking for in a resume? That's a joke. They're not hiding it at all. They gave you the job description. Use it. Go through. Mark up the words, the skills, the technical skills, the professional skills, or those soft skills. Mark those up, highlight those. Definitely circle, highlight, star, whatever, the ones that they're using multiple times. If they use teamwork or collaboration 4 times throughout this job description, you can bet that it better be in your resume. And use the words that they're looking for. Why do you want to use the words that they're looking for? Has anyone heard of an applicant tracking system? Some yes, a lot no. Be afraid. No, I'm just kidding. Don't be afraid. We can beat the applicant tracking system. So what it is think of it as an algorithm that it pulls in your resume and all the words out of your resume. And it knows all the words that this job is looking for. And it just kicks out a percentage match. I like to think I'm pretty good at my job. So I had a pretty resume. It was great. And so I get a reverse engineered applicant tracking system to practice on. And I put my resume in there and I pull out a career counselor position from Tulane University because that'd be a cool place to live. And what do you think? Oh, let me add this. The cutoff percentage. Whoa, I did not know that existed. The cutoff percentage for most jobs is 80%. There's research out there that says somewhere around 70% of applications never get read by a human. They go in the trash well before that. And it's because of that percentage match. So anyway, I think I'm pretty good at my job. I plugged all this in. What do you think my percentage match was? Remember, 80% is the cutoff. Any thoughts? No guesses? 60? You're really nice. Thank you very much. 13. I got a 13% match. Turns out I never even used the word career counselor in my entire resume. I used my HR title, which was Student Services Coordinator 2, which means absolutely nothing to anyone outside of that university that I was working for. I didn't go through and take the words that they're looking for and put them in my resume. That's what you have to do. That's what's going to build your credibility. That's what's going to show them that I made this just for you. And I am the best fit for your position. Make sense? I honestly don't know when I started, so will you give me like a 5-minute, please shut up time frame? Awesome. And then I'll start paying attention from there. Okay, sections. So there's multiple sections within a resume, but there's 3 pretty standard. There's 4 different ways to start out a resume. Anyone heard of a summary, a profile, an objective statement? Okay, so an objective statement is just, why am I reading your resume? 1 sentence, that's it. To obtain this position with this company, that's it. A summary is 3 to 5 bullets about, why am I reading your resume? What skills do you want to highlight? What experiences do you want to highlight in 3 to 5 bullets? It's also a really good place. Let's say you have 3 internships trying to get into engineering, or that you've done within engineering, but they're also looking for some leadership experience, and you worked retail for a while and you were an assistant manager. Well, that might not be on your resume because it was a while ago or something like that, or you have enough experience that you push that off. But I'm going to put that in that summary to showcase that I have leadership experience. It's a place where you can add things that you're not going to put into your resume. Okay, that's objective, that's summary. A profile is a combination of the 2. It is, why am I reading, or what are you trying to accomplish by this resume, and why am I reading? So you're justifying those skills or those your qualification. Or the 4th way, my favorite way, none of them. Just start with content. Again, this is valuable real estate, right? If you're sacrificing a really good job or internship or skills section or something like that, just because you have a summary or an objective or something like that, or one of those 3, get rid of it. It's not necessary. Also, have you ever written a cover letter? Well, you're going to learn about them in a little bit, but that's what it is. Awesome. That's what a cover letter is. So you're now duplicating efforts and taking up space. So just start with that content if that's all you need. Okay, now let's get into the 3 on here. Education section. If a position requires an advanced degree, education section should be at the top of your resume, always. Yeah, because my goal for anyone that I help with their resume is that that employer is going to be looking at it and going, yep, 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 you qualify. I want them to be going down the list just saying, yeah, this is why you're awesome. This is why you're awesome. So if that number 1 criteria is an advanced degree, it should be the first thing that they see. So it should be at the top of your resume after your name and contact information section. Make sense? Okay. Also, just a quick note in your education section, you don't have to put, in a job description, you put how long, when you started, when you ended. They don't care. When did you complete your degree? If you haven't yet, expect it this month, this year. It's just an expected completion. All I care about is when can I hire you? Experience. One of the number 1 points of feedback and the easiest point of feedback whenever I'm looking at a resume is consistency. When I read your education section, if that's right up there at the top or whatever your first section is, I want to be able to burn through the whole rest of the resume knowing what I'm reading, how to read it. If the company names are first, if your university is first, and then your degree, and your dates over here. In your experience section, better be company name, title, date over here. Make it consistent. So that way I know how to read it and I can go through really quickly. How long do you have for an employer to look at your resume? They've done a lot of research into this. Any guesses? One minute? That's also really generous. 30? 15? 10? Not 1. Okay, that's too much. 6 to 7 seconds on average. Now, I don't want that to scare you completely. What I want you to know is that's probably not, well, that's not all the time they're ever going to spend on it, but it could be. If I don't see within 6 to 7 seconds why you might be a good fit, if you have some of the right experience, if you have the right degree, if you have some of those things that I'm looking for, then I'm probably going to sit that off to the side. Because I might have 150, 200, 300 applications to get through today. So it's got to be a quick process. It's got to be easy. Now you pass that 6 to 7 seconds and you've hooked them. Now they're going to read into that detail. Now they're going to read those bullets that you worked so hard on. They're going to see all those skills that you put in there to show them that I can beat out the next person in line. So that 6 to 7 seconds, they call it the 6 to 7 second catch. You need to be able to catch them, catch their attention. Organized by qualifications, that's another aspect of a resume that's really important to understand, is your sections are by qualification. So I've had a few jobs, I've had a few internships. If my jobs are not relevant to this position that I'm applying for, but my internships are, well, I'm going to have education, internships, work experience. If my work experience is more relevant, that's going to go above internships. I'm going to make it relevant to what they're looking for, and I'm going to order that. Also, make sure your headings accurately represent what's under it. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, is whenever I see awards and certifications, and I see 3 scholarships under it. What's up? What am I missing? Certifications. Where's your certifications? So make sure that the heading accurately represents what's under it. You see that a lot in templates. People just don't change the heading in that template. They just fill in what's under it. And that could lead to some misconceptions within your resume, some missed expectations. Okay, what's my next slide? Because I have to hurry. Okay, yep. This one's really important. So are you ready? Part of my philosophy in career counseling is from a planned happenstance theory or a chaos theory. And basically it means that everything is happening around us constantly. You ever heard the phrase like believe it into existence? Like you think about it enough, you will it into existence. Well, it's really, you're seeing opportunities. So if I'm talking to you and I start talking about something that you're really interested in or a research path that you're really interested in, are you ready to say, oh, I could send you my resume right now or tonight? Or would it take a couple of days? Well, by that, I might have filled that position already. Maybe you're looking for a position and you see one. Are you ready to apply for it right then? Or with a few edits because you need to tailor it to each of those different jobs. So are you ready? Which brings me into update your resume consistently. At least once a semester, because you're constantly doing stuff. Don't forget what you did. Oh, how many people attended that event? How much money? How much time did you save? What was your efficiency changes? What percentage? If you don't do this and you try to do it in 2 years, 3 years, you're gonna forget some of those details or those individual nuances. So make sure that you get that in there. All right, and finally, I'm gonna stop after this. Why you might not hear back. Don't get too discouraged. Do you know what the callback rate? Oh, never mind. That's a terrible question because I put it on there. The callback rate for a blind application, that's, you don't know anyone there, 1 to 3%. I worked with students who had applied to 400 or 500 jobs before they got 1 callback. Don't get too discouraged, and it varies depending on your field. But always know that quality trumps quantity. Sending the same resume to 50 different people is way worse than sending one high quality tailored resume to an employer. $70 to 80% of jobs are secured through networking alone. That's still a thing. It is who you know. So do some networking events. BioKansas, check out our website. We do all kinds of networking events, coffee hours, meet and greets. You have presenters probably coming in all the time. Do you ever stop, go up to the front after they get done talking and say, thanks? This is who I am. This is what I want to do. Start doing that whenever you're in your classes or your programs, or wherever you're at. And just build those connections. Because you never know. I may say, oh, I actually just went to a company a couple of weeks ago that was looking for someone who wanted to do that. I do it all the time. Make sense? All right.
Perfect. Let's give Daniel a big round of applause. And we have time for a couple of questions. If there's any questions off the bat here. Thank you. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
Would you recommend to start a resume from scratch or use the resume online?
100% of the time, start from scratch. There's a lot of issues that come from templates. I'm not trying to offend anyone if that's what you started with, but all templates should be gathered into a pile and set on fire. And it's for a really important reason. It's someone else's program. It's someone else's structure and guides and everything else. And it's hard to know how to manipulate every one of those. So starting it from scratch, it's yours. And it does not need to be pretty. That's one of the biggest reasons people use templates is they want it to be pretty. A functional resume is beautiful. This may be ugly, this may be boring, everything else. It's consistent, it's easy to read. I can burn through that quickly. There's a good balance of white space versus text. it's a solid resume. But half of it wasn't taken up by your name in some print font, cursive font that looks really pretty, but serves no purpose. Again, valuable real estate. Make it as functional as possible.
But having said that and having that, following that question, I suppose. So what I've done is ask people that are working similar jobs that are the one that I want. So I follow their template, if you will. So let's say I know Jill and I know that she got the job. And then I say, Jill, can you give me your resume or your CV or whatever, just so that I can sort of know how you put things together. That's sort of following a template.
Kind of. You also don't know how Jill got that job.
Well, that's true.
So this is going to be the most universal, widely accepted. There may be some employers that say, oh, well, that could be prettier. Oh, you should put your picture in it, which is no.
No, right?
No. There may be some that I've heard it though. I've heard recruiters say that, oh, it'd be really nice if you put your resume or your picture on there before a career fair. So that way I know who I'm meeting or blah, 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 blah. Don't ever do it. But they can never say this is wrong. It's the most universally accepted kind of structure, format, and it's, again, highly functional.
I have one last question. What is the smallest font size you could use?
Thank you very much. 10 is the absolute minimum. But 11 is the most common. The reason for that is think of your audience. You never know if they have a visual impairment. Are they able to read it? You don't want your resume to ever not be able to be read. Same what goes for color. If you want to use like one other color, use a dark color, like a dark blue or a dark gray or a dark red, like a maroon, something like that. Don't ever use a pastel, because what if I print it out in black and white? Well, now your name just disappeared because my toner sucks. I don't want that to happen to you. So make sure that overall, is this readable? That should be your primary.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so next we're going to hear a recording from Dr. Tobler on academic student resumes. He could not be with us in person today. Dr. Tobler is a professor of in biology here at K-State, and his areas of specialization include adaptation, fish biology, and distributed environments. In his lab, they strive to combine field-based studies with analytical and experimental approaches to the lab. He's also involved in public engagements and science outreach, including the Kansas Science Communication Initiative and Kansas.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mickey Tobler. I'm a faculty member in biology, and I'm here to tell you something about how to assemble a CV. Now, first off, I want to apologize for not being there in person. I had a small accident last week. I broke a tooth, and I'm getting that fixed while you all are sitting here. But I hope this recording will provide some helpful information. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I will list my email address at the very end of this presentation. So what is a CV? CV, of course, stands for curriculum vitae, which is Latin, simply meaning the course of one's life. So the CV is literally a document that we use as academics to chronicle all of our scholarly activities. And as a consequence, CVs tend to be quite comprehensive and large documents. As you move through your career, you will keep adding information to your CV. And by the time you're at my career stage, your CV is likely going to be, a couple of dozen pages, if not more. And so I really liked kind of this comic strip from PhD Comics. It kind of somewhat facetiously implies that you simply copy paste stuff into your CV. But of course, you shouldn't be plagiarizing your CV. I think the general notion that you copy and paste in there is actually a good one. Because as you get things accomplished in your career, you're supposed to copy those accomplishments and paste them faithfully in your CV to make sure that you have an accurate representation of all your activities. So from that perspective, a CV is very different from a resume, right? Your resume is usually short, maybe 1 or 2 pages. where you really emphasize the skill you have gained and the work, you lead in with your work experiences rather than your educational background. These resumes are frequently used if you apply for positions in industry, nonprofits, and the public sector. But CVs are much longer and they emphasize academic accomplishments rather than skills. Of course, those accomplishments are reflective of the skills you've gained, but we communicate them very differently in academia when we apply for faculty positions, fellowships, and grants. Also, CVs invariably begin with the educational background, and then it essentially includes your story in the form of a complete list of activities that you have gone through as part of your career. So I don't want to belabor the differences between the resume and the CV too much, but rather just dive into what should actually be part of your CV. The first thing that you need to have in your CV, kind of the starting point, of course, some of your personal details, such as your name, title, professional address, and contact information. And it's really important that you don't overshare at this point. So you should not include information such as your birth date, your marital status, whether or not you have kids, or any of that sort of information in your CV, simply because it's nobody's business. This is your private matter, and your future employer or the granting agency you're applying for, they should make decisions on whether and how to support you based on your accomplishments and not some of the personal circumstances. Often, actually, the implicit biases that we all carry, they can punish you if you're oversharing. And frankly, it's also illegal for future employers to ask you about any sorts of those personal details. So leave them out. Give them the basics, who you are, how you can be contacted. And then in a CV, you really want to lead in, as I already mentioned, with your educational background. And you do this by listing your most current experience first. So if you have a PhD, you start with a PhD, then go do your master's, and then do your bachelor's, so people can see where you currently at, and ultimately how you got to that point. Along with your educational background, it's often also important to list your professional appointments. This will be more and more important as you go through your career and gain basically, or grow the list of places you've worked at. But just as for your educational background, you want to lead in with the most recent experience first, and basically work your way back throughout your careers. So early in this context, and when you talk about your academic education, your professional appointments, it's also a good place to talk about any sort of professional licenses and certifications you may have earned. And then I like to kind of list any sort of awards or honors that I have reached in the past. There's kind of two schools in academia here. Some people list this at the very end of their CV. I like to lead in with it because, you know, what if you receive some awards? These are accomplishments that deserve to be highlighted right up front. Now, besides your kind of personal and educational background, you of course also want to talk about kind of the three other realms we're active in as academics, and that's the research, teaching, and professional service. In terms of how you talk about your research experiences, can vary quite substantially depending on your career stage. Once you've graduated with your PhD, maybe you're a postdoc or even a junior faculty member, at that point, it's really that your products speak for your experiences. So in a classical CV, our research experiences are reported in the form of publications, patents, presentations, and research funding. For your publications, you may want to split out peer-reviewed journal articles from book chapters, and especially from opinion pieces and book reviews that are not peer-reviewed. For presentations, you may want to split out invited versus contributed presentations at professional conferences, and you also want to split out talks versus posters. Now, as you go through your career, this section of your CV will really grow and blossom, right? Because the more time you spend in the kind of the academic enterprise, the more products you will build. The thing is, if you're maybe an undergraduate student or an early graduate student, not all of your research experiences have directly translated into a product yet. It doesn't mean you have a bunch of relevant experiences. So one thing that I recommend if you are kind of early in the career is that you don't leave out those other meaningful experiences. And you can do this by simply describing your professional and research experiences in your CV. You want to describe exactly where you did what. And I always encourage my students to think about kind of the skills they gain during the different professional or research experiences that they've gone through. So you might have learned a bunch about communicating science, or about conducting research projects, or managing people or resources as part of those. And you want to highlight exactly what it is that you have learned. Use active words to describe what you did during the different research or professional experiences, and make them relevant for the jobs or opportunities you're applying for. As you move through the different career stages, these kind of descriptions of your research experiences will become less and less important, because eventually you will simply see all of your efforts reflected in academic products, meaning your publications, your patents, your presentations, and your research funding. Now, other than research experiences, of course, as scholars, we're often involved in teaching. This is also something you want to detail in your CV. If you have any sort of formal training in teaching, that should be mentioned, maybe in the form of teaching certifications. And you definitely want to include a complete list of courses you have taught or TA'd in the course of your career. In terms of the courses you taught, you might want to specify whether these were lecture or laboratory courses. A lot of people also emphasize how many students were enrolled in particular courses. That, of course, can be an important signaling. For example, if people are assessing whether you have any experience in managing large classrooms, for example. In the context of teaching, you might also want to list teaching-related publications you've published, or any sort of curriculum development activities that you were involved in. And then I think it's also important to highlight your experiences as mentors. A lot of you probably already mentor undergraduate students as part of your research projects, and you should highlight that experience into your CV. You can do this simply through a list of names of mentees that you have worked with, or you might summarize it in a brief paragraph, like I have it in this example, where I simply describe how many people I have mentored in the past and how they were supported. So in my full CV, I do actually list every one of my mentees by name, and then mention also how they were supported, what sort of key accomplishments they've had, and what the current positions these past mentees are currently working in. It gives people an impression of your accomplishments as a mentors, as your mentees have moved forward through their careers. The one thing you should not include in your CV is responses to teaching evaluations. Those are confidential documents, and even though some universities might ask you for those sorts of documents when you apply for a job, those are not typically documents you should share in a CV, but you can do this by other means. Last but not least, we're all, of course, also conducting a lot of service as academics, and this is also something that should be reflected on your CV. So later in your career, you might be an editorial board member, or already now you might be a peer reviewer for journals, strategic agencies like NSF and NIH, or federal agencies like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And any sort of service that you provide in that context should be listed in your CV. Of course, you need to follow kind of confidentiality rules, but you can simply state maybe the journal name and the number of manuscripts you have reviewed for that particular journal during your lifetime. You also want to list departmental university service. So if you're part of a formal committee, for example, as part of your graduate student life, that belongs in a CV. And of course, if you're engaged in public outreach, consult media or any sorts of creative activities in that direction, that is also fair game for your CV. Other things that people often list on their CV includes specific skills. I think this is not relevant for you to mention that you are able to use Microsoft Office products, because everybody can do that and is supposed to know how to do that, right? What you really want to highlight here are skills that set you apart from other candidates. So if you have specific foreign language skills, that is really useful. If you are able to use a specific software, or if you know programming languages, that belongs there. And if there's any sort of specialized technical skills that set you apart, you can highlight that in your CV. Later in life, you also might have administrative experiences that you can list. And many people actually list their professional membership in their professional societies on their CVs as well. Some of the things that don't belong in the CVs are already mentioned: personal information, your birth date, your marital status, whether you're a parent or not. It's nobody's business but yours. Also leave out statements about your competencies or statements about the jobs you're looking for. You frequently find those in online templates for CVs, and they're not usually a part of an academic CV. And also don't list your references or your letter writers on your CV. When you apply for jobs and that information is required, they will give you a separate opportunity to provide those names, and they should not be part of your regular CV. In terms of best practices, there's especially one, that is update your CVs regularly. You will forget what you have done in the past, and you don't know what experience that you're having right now are going to be relevant for opportunities in the future. So take the time on a weekly or at least a monthly basis to reflect on what you have done recently, and make sure that your CV is complete, and you don't think about key accomplishments or commitments that you leave out ultimately. It's also good practice to customize your CV for different job. So I have a master document with my CV that I just add everything, all of my professional activities. But whenever I want to share a CV with somebody, or if I apply for an opportunity, I will save that document as a new document and start deleting things out and rearranging things so that information are really provided in a way that is relevant for the opportunity I'm seeking. So for research positions, I will lead with my research accomplishments, my publications, and my grants. For teaching opportunities, I will lead in with my teaching experiences. For administrational positions, I will lead with my administrational accomplishments. There's also sometimes my list of mentees is too long for a research opportunity, so I will truncate it down, and I will customize the CV in a way that highlights my strengths in the context of the opportunity that presents itself. You can also use portfolios to augment your CV. So if you have a teaching portfolio, for example, you can simply list that on your website, and you can include a link on your CV that points towards that website. So if somebody's interested in obtaining more information about your teaching accomplishments, they can find it there. Last but not least, there's also some design considerations when you're creating your CV. I think most importantly is that you want to use consistent formatting. You will want to use the same typeface and font for subtitles consistently, and you don't want to switch it up halfway through the document. Seems like a no-brainer, and still you wouldn't believe how many CVs I've seen where fonts are used inconsistently and formatting has been done inconsistently. Also, use an appropriate typeface. Use something that's easy to read, can be serif or non-serif fonts. I have some example fonts up here that are really work well for CVs. And then use a single typeface with different fonts for emphasis. So in my CV example here, for example, everything is written in Open Sans. Some of it is extra bold, some of it is semi-bold, some of it is light or in italics. And if you use just the same typeface, it gives kind of a visual consistencies to your CV that is hard to achieve if you mix and match different typefaces in the same document. And then last but not least, make sure that you do organize your items hierarchically using a clear visual structure. I like, for example, using horizontal lines to really break up the document into chunks that the reader's eye can follow. And ultimately, ultimately your reader reads many CVs, right? So somebody that is on a job committee, they will read dozens, sometimes hundreds of CVs, and you want to make sure that you allow your reader to find the information they're looking for as easily as possible, and you achieve this with a clear visual structure. And then last but not least, this is just a practical tip. I use actually tables to format my entire CV. So if I actually give you the document preview here from Word, you can see everything here is a table. And that's simply because, in my experience, using the tab character makes it much more difficult to achieve visual consistency as compared to the use of tables in Word. So in summary, there's really the 5 C's for your CV. Make sure your CV is clear. It means well organized and logical in structure. Make sure it's concise. You only include the relevant and necessary information for any given opportunity. And at the same time, it needs to be complete. You need to include everything you need to convince people that you're the person with the right experiences for a particular opportunity. Should be consistent in formatting, and most importantly, should be current, up-to-date in the information. So work on your CV on a regular basis to make sure that there's no gaps in your record. So if you have questions, please feel free to email me under tobler@ksu.edu. Again, I apologize for not being here in person, and I hope that if there's any questions arising, that we can resolve those really quickly.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, we're going to hear from Jared Meitler, who is from the Career Center. So Jared is the Associate Director of the Career Center and serves as the liaison to the graduate school, advising graduate students in the College of Arts and Sciences. His experiences in business and volunteer leadership and management, and is passionate about supporting others' personal and professional development and helping people uncover who they can become. Pass it over to you, Jared.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So in addition to what's been shared by Daniel and Dr. Tobler already, I'm going to fill in some gaps and then also hope to answer any questions that you might still have while I'm here. The specific topic that I'm discussing is formatting. And I can't think of too many people in my life that would consider formatting to be a fun topic to discuss. However, there's nothing more fun than SpongeBob and a rainbow. So we'll start there. A couple of quick notes. When I'm working with students and other candidates on resumes, I always kind of approach the conversation with trying to make the most of the space that's being utilized. And so one thing that often comes up is how to get rid of wasted space that's present on a resume, on a CV, etc. And so one thing that I would encourage you all to note is that for most documents that are being printed out, and not all documents will be printed out on the other end when you apply, but for most of those documents, it's really safe to have margins as narrow as a ½ inch all the way around. And so that will really give you kind of the most space that you can possibly have on that 1 to 2 page document if it's a resume, and then on your CV if it's going to be longer, you're applying for an academic role. You've already heard the font size spiel, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here, other than what Daniel mentioned about kind of the minimum font size of being 10 is very accurate. If you do have someone that prints out a resume and has a physical copy, it does get very difficult to read if you're utilizing a font size that's smaller than that. So that would be the bare minimum. But know that all the way up to kind of a 12-point font for your standard size is very much okay and in line with what would be quote unquote normal. The only exception to that I would mention is for your section headings as well as your name at your top of your resume. Those types of pieces or font styles would definitely be okay to be a little bit larger. So an example of this is most of the time when we're working with candidates, we'll encourage candidates to have their name be kind of the largest font size on the document. Above all else, you want your name to be something that is recognizable and memorable for the person that you're applying for. And so because of that, having your name be a few font sizes larger is very common and encouraged. So let's say, for example, you've got a standard font size for most of your text as 12 point. Something like 18 or 24 would be very appropriate for your name at the top of your resume. This goes in line with what Dr. Tobler just shared, but your font styles should be very easily read. And so oftentimes when working with candidates, we'll talk about safe font styles. And so things like Calibri, Arial Times are very safe fonts that will be easily read by the reader. And so those are some things to keep in mind. One of the key reasons why Daniel brought up that it's important to avoid templates when possible is because so many organizations, both higher education institutions as well as industry organizations, are moving towards using applicant tracking systems as their first level of screening as applicants apply for roles. And so oftentimes what will happen when you use a template is many of the templates that you'll go find online will have tables that you'll plug the information into. Or you might just have an open text box where you enter the information and then it creates a designed format for you. Most of the applicant tracking systems that are out there right now that organizations are using do not read template resumes well at all because of the tables and text boxes that are being used to build those documents. And so again, I would just encourage you, if at all possible, even if you feel really good about your CV or resume that you already have in place that's in a template, I would encourage you to copy paste that information out into your own document. Because what we find is over time, it gets much, much easier to build on your resume or CV if you've already created it in a blank document versus using a template. And I know certainly as advanced degree seeking students, you have a lot of experience that you're bringing to the table, and that will only continue to grow over time. And if you already have a template that you're using, oftentimes those templates are restrictive in terms of the amount of detail that you can provide in them. And so again, it's just one more reason to avoid templates and use, Google Doc or Microsoft Word, etc. Consistency has already been hit on a little bit from the other speakers, but I would say that one of the things that we hear the most from employers that are hiring students is that the easier it is to find the information, the more consistent the information is on the page, the higher the likelihood that that information is going to be legible and for you to get past that 6 or 7 seconds that they might be using in their early screening. And so consistency is definitely key. And then like I mentioned early on, making the most of your space can really help your document kind of be visibly appealing to an employer and also help you feel kind of confident in the document as well. So I don't know about any of you, but I'm a visual learner. So we're going to spend the next few minutes just looking at some examples and maybe having some dialogue about what looks great and some things that you notice that might be able to be taken away with these examples. So just so you all know, on the Career Center's website, we have a resource that's available called our Resume and Interview Guide. And in that resume and interview guide, there are about 20 resume and CV examples from former students that I would encourage you to go look up at some point if you want to see some really solid resume and CV examples. These are all students that have gone through K-State and their resumes and CVs have been critiqued by staff members in the Career Center. And these are obviously going to be contact information changed and those sorts of things. But the experiences that you'll see are verbatim as those PhD, masters, and undergraduate students have listed them as they've come in. And then these would be kind of their final iterations that they might go apply for an academic or organizational or industry position with. So a couple notes here on this first example. The first thing I'll call out here is you'll notice just how clean and consistent things like the section headings are. So same typeface, same font size and style. One of the things that I like about this resume is that the candidate has used what we call selective bolding. So let's say, for example, you apply for a job and one of the things that's spelled out in the job is that there are certain skills, or maybe it's language proficiency, or maybe there's a certain type of software experience that is preferred, but not necessarily required of that job. Well, sometimes using selective bolding on certain words or skills or qualifications can help that stand out for an employer or an organization. And so just note that that's one way to make certain pieces of information stand out on your document. The next thing that I'll bring up, I'll start with the contact information section here. So you'll notice that on Emily's document, Emily has used a much larger typeface for her name versus the rest of the contact information. So here's kind of an example of that nugget that I shared before. The top section of this resume also would cover a little bit of the information that Daniel talked about earlier with a profile or a summary section. I always encourage students to think about the job and the job description that you're applying for before you decide how you structure the flow of your document. But in this case specifically, if the job description said something like, we are looking to hire an innovative and analytical researcher for our team, well, that then would give you a really good clue that starting with a summary section that really succinctly outlines your research experience might be a smart and strategic move in this case. And so again, with Emily's, she's kind of started by highlighting some of the research experience as well as those skills and knowledge areas that might be most important with that job she's applying for. The next example that I'll pull up kind of illustrates that there's no one perfect way to format your application documents. So whether it's a resume or a CV, ultimately, this is your document. You're the only one that can decide. And one of the hard things about resumes and CVs is if you talk to 30 different people about your document, you might get 30 different opinions about what that document should look like. And so one of the reasons why I bring up this example is because this skills section looks a little different than even Emily's skills that are listed. So if you look at Emily's skill and knowledge areas in that second section down, you'll notice that each of those skills and knowledge areas are listed out and separated by bullets. Whereas this document has been broken out even within the skills by section. And so just again, know that this is your document. You can ultimately put whatever you want and structure it how you want. But like I said before, I would really focus on the job that you're applying for. A couple people, both Dr. Tobler as well as Daniel, talked about tailoring your documents to whatever you're applying for. And I could not emphasize that point enough. That's definitely something we encourage you to do. And so especially if on the job description, you notice that things like molecular genetics or cell biology, biochemistry techniques, languages, and applications are 4 sections of skills that they're looking for in that job description, well, then that gives you a perfect context clue that might be a smart way for you to structure that on your application document as well. So use the job description to your advantage as much as you possibly can when you're developing your different materials. I also want to spend just a couple of minutes here talking a little bit about cover letters And then we'll spend some time just answering any follow-up questions you might have from both Dr. Tobler's comments, as well as anything that Daniel and I have shared as well. So with most job announcements, two things will be expected. A resume or CV, depending on if it's industry or academic that you're applying for, and then a cover letter. Those are the two most common things. Occasionally, you'll also be asked to upload references, but that's not always the case. And so just know that resumes and CVs, as well as cover letters, are the two kind of most common documents that you'll see. Cover letters are really kind of a unique opportunity for you to articulate what makes you the most qualified candidate for that role. So whereas a resume or a CV might be an abbreviated or even an elongated summary of your experiences, your cover letter is really an opportunity for you to articulate the 2 or 3 qualifications or experiences that make you the best candidate for that job. So when you're experiencing kind of preparation for writing a cover letter, again, the job description, as well as kind of the company's profile or company's website, should really be kind of your cheat sheets as you document the information that you're trying to articulate through your cover letter. You'll notice here that this is a pretty formally written letter. There's a couple of things that I'll shout out as far as formatting and structure. The first thing to mention is we always encourage students have the same contact information or section heading on your resume or CV as you do at the top of your cover letter. So imagine opening that information as a packet of information that's clean and consistent across all of the documents. So again, I'll repeat, use your contact information or your header from your resume or CV and make it be the same on your cover letter as well. That way, as the reader is utilizing that information going from page to page, it's clean and consistent from one document to the other. The next thing that's worth calling out is that whenever it's absolutely possible, try to make sure that you are addressing an actual person. So, dear Dr. Aiken. Usually on a job announcement or from the company or organization's website, you'll be able to find who the actual hiring authority or person that's going to be reviewing those documents. Not always, but typically you will. We encourage candidates to avoid things like "to whom it may concern" or "dear search committee" or "dear hiring committee." If you can acknowledge an actual person, that's very helpful. Now, if you can't find any information about who the hiring authority is going to be, that's when "dear search committee" or "to whom it may concern" is an okay approach. The last thing that I'll mention on this first example is that we do still encourage students when possible, or candidates when possible, to type in the full kind of address that's going to be reading the cover letter as a formally written document. So just know that the reason you're seeing all of Dr. Aiken's information is we do still encourage candidates in many cases to go ahead and list the full department location information when it's possible. Now, there's a second kind of cover letter example that I want to share with you. And when I put this information up here, I encourage you to kind of shout out what you notice as different between this first one and then the second one. So what do you notice here? What's different? Yeah, absolutely. So there's bullet points in addition to kind of the formal structure that's listed here. Just like with your resume or your CV, there's no black or white or right or wrong flow for these documents. However, one of the reasons that bullet points can be really, really helpful is to call specific attention to some very pertinent things that you notice that are clues from the job announcement that's listed on the website or wherever you come across it. The other thing that I really love about bullet points in a cover letter is, I don't know about you all, but when I opened this document for the first time, my eyes immediately went to those bullet points, and that's what I read first. So that reader might go back and read the whole thing, but if you've got some really, really strategic things that you know make you a really well-qualified candidate for that position, then I encourage you to consider thinking about how bullet points might get your reader's attention more quickly and draw them to that information. The rest of the structure of the cover letter is pretty standard overall, but I did include this example partially because it's got the student's LinkedIn information at the bottom of the page. We do encourage candidates to include their personalized LinkedIn profile link in their documents whenever you can. But if you're going to do that, just make sure that your LinkedIn profile is reflective of the application documents that you're utilizing as well. What you don't want an interviewer or a hiring authority to do is pull up your LinkedIn profile and not see all of the stuff that you have listed on your CV or your resume. So make sure those two things are working to your advantage together and not against each other if you're going to include your LinkedIn profile summary on your application documents. A couple of other really brief things to mention. Because I work at the Career Center and the liaison to the graduate school, I just want all of you to know that as a current student, you have full access to the Career Center and its resources. So that includes attendance to any of our events that we're hosting. It includes scheduling one-on-one appointments with your career liaison in our office. So how many of you in the room are studying in programs in the College of Arts and Sciences? A couple of you. All right, so those of you that are in the College of Arts and Sciences right now, I would be the person you would meet with if you scheduled a one-on-one appointment to have a look at a CV or a resume. If you wanted some outside perspective on kind of the job search process, et cetera. You can schedule all those appointments through your Handshake account. And Handshake is basically your online tool for career services at K-State that's available 24/7. So not only can you schedule appointments through us, but in addition to that, you can navigate our online jobs database that's exclusive to you as a K-State student. You can see our employer database of employers that recruit at K-State on a regular basis. And you can see what types of career fairs and other career events are taking place on our campus and online that we're hosting that you can tap into, similar to seminars like this that can be helpful in many ways. Those of you that are outside the College of Arts and Sciences also have full access to Handshake. You'll just work with a different one of our career advisors in our office. So the way that our office is structured is we have a specific person that works with students in the College of Ag, in the College of Vet Med, in the College of Arts and Sciences, Engineering, and so on. And the reason that we do that is we want you as students to be able to get the most specialized career perspective as you can based on the industries that you're most interested in studying in. So again, for those of you that are in arts and sciences, would love to meet with you at some point if you would like some help with anything career related. And we do support both kind of the academic job search as well as industry searches. So kind of regardless of what direction you're hoping to go long term, or maybe even if you're at a crossroads and don't really know what direction you want to go, that's really where we can be supportive and helpful as you're navigating your time here as a student. The other thing that I'll mention, how many of you have utilized our career closet before? Anybody at least know about what the career closet is? All right, well, I'm glad I'm about to share that information then. So the career closet is available to you and we're located over in the Bernie Family Welcome Center, which is just right across the street from the Student Union. The career closet is an opportunity for you as a K-State student to acquire gently used professional attire to use in your lab settings, to use as you interview for positions, to use at career fairs, etc. So what we do is we ask members of the K-State and Manhattan communities to donate back their gently used professional attire so that we can then provide that to you all as students completely free of charge. So there's no cost associated with utilizing things in the career closet. You can keep things as long as you want. We often get questions from students about how long can I keep this item if I take it? Those are your items. So once you take an item from the career closet, we never expect to see it back. So just know that we recognize that dressing professionally is a large expense. And we know that budgets are often tight as you are navigating your student experience. So just know that the career closet is a resource that you can always utilize. Career closet's open anytime the Career Center is open. Our regular business hours are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so just know you can stop by and utilize that resource at any point that you would like. And there might be a couple of you that are thinking about attending the All University Career Fair this week. And so just know that we've got a ton of things in the career closet, just waiting for you to wear them out to Bramlage Coliseum over the next few days. If you're not familiar with what the All University Career Fair is, I would encourage you to consider stopping by Bramlage Coliseum, which is the men's and women's basketball facility on campus, where we'll have between 300 and 400 employers recruiting you for both internships and full-time jobs over the next 3 days. So the structure of the All University Career Fair is such that employers that are recruiting students from the College of Agriculture, Arts and Sciences, Business, and Health and Human Sciences will primarily be focused on recruiting on our campus on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. If you're a student who is either in engineering or wanting to do something maybe in data science, statistics, or anything else in kind of the engineering or technology realms, those employers will mostly be recruiting on Wednesday and Thursday of this week out at that event. If you, just out of curiosity, how many of you have ever been to a career fair? Anybody? A couple of you? All right, so if you haven't ever been to a career fair before, in a nutshell, imagine walking into this room, but much larger, with these tables all set up kind of in a big circle, with industry recruiters set up at each table, trying to talk to you about their opportunities at their organization. So most of the time what happens at a career fair is you might print off, I don't know, 10 or 15 copies of your resume and be prepared to go talk to employers about what they offer, what types of industries or what types of majors they recruit for, and then share a little bit about yourself and why you might be a good fit for that organization's opportunities, excuse me. So the career fair, we continue to find from students that it is the kind of the most popular way that students land both internships and full-time opportunities for after graduation. And I would say, especially if you are someone who is interested in going into industry and not necessarily academy after you're done with your advanced degree program, the All University Career Fair is definitely something that should be on your radar. Now, the other thing that's really cool about the All University Career Fair is I'm sure that many, if not all of you, are experiencing vast research opportunities in the various programs that you're in. And so it can also be a really cool way to build relationships with industry partners that might be potential for research partnerships down the road. So I encourage you, regardless if you're hoping to be in the academy long-term and do research in your fields, or if you're wanting to get a job in industry after graduation, the All University Career Fair can be a great way to network with opportunities both now and down the road. So I'll go ahead and pause there and would love to respond to any questions that you have about the career fair, about resumes or CVs or anything else that was shared today. What can I respond to? Yeah, go ahead.
How should you structure the contents of your cover letter?
How should you structure the contents of your cover letter? Well, the beginning of a cover letter would typically start as a general introduction and how you found out about the open position that you're applying for. The rest of your body paragraphs in the cover letter, I always encourage candidates to really use the job announcement or the job description to decide on your flow. So earlier, Daniel talked about getting out a highlighter to figure out kind of what are the key things that they're looking for here. And if you notice certain clues like, wow, they talk about teamwork 5 times in this document, well, that probably gives you a clue that that's something that's going to be really important to them. And so I encourage you to basically structure the rest of your cover letter using the job description to understand what's most important to them. The other thing that's really nice about a lot of job descriptions is they'll have both their required qualifications as well as their preferred qualifications. And so if you meet several of the preferred qualifications that you know might differentiate you from the other folks that might be applying for that job, articulating the how and the experience that backs up those preferred qualifications can be really strong content for your cover letter as well. What other questions can I respond to? Yeah.
How long should it be?
Yeah, so the question is, how long should a cover letter be? In general, a cover letter should be 1 page max. What we find when talking with employers is that most of the time, if you can't articulate the key things that make you a well-qualified candidate in 1 page, you probably don't need to add it in there. I will say that as you continue down your pathway, kind of the farther you get into your career path, sometimes there's exceptions to the 1 page cover letter rule. So, you know, if you are 10 years post PhD or 10 years post master's program, that might look a little different. Being onto a 2nd page might be okay. But for most jobs that are going to be what you all are applying for, whether it's, maybe a postdoc position, maybe it's a kind of an assistant professor role, or a researcher job in industry, just as some different examples, a one-page cover letter max would be the way to go. What other questions can I respond to?
You mentioned a couple times that the need of like templates to build a resume. LinkedIn, there's a resume builder. Shall we use it?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. Yeah, you'll notice that many platforms online will add templates that will advertise templates that can be utilized. The LinkedIn resume builder is okay for jobs in LinkedIn that you might be applying directly through LinkedIn for. But outside of that, what LinkedIn does not necessarily always have is a template that's going to work for every applicant tracking system that might be used across all the different organizations that you're applying for. So while you could do that, the perspective that I would share is it's risky. Because what can happen if you apply through an applicant tracking system organization and your resume is in a template form, there's always a chance that it's not going to read it the way that you see it when it's printed out, for example. And that's really the risk that you run by utilizing templates. And so we know, based on the companies that build those ATS systems, as well as employers that read a lot of the information after it comes through an ATS, that it's much safer to utilize just a blank doc, whether it's Google Docs or Word, etc. It's a great question. What other questions can I respond to? Yeah, sure.
Is that the yearly event?
Yeah, awesome question. Yeah, so the All University Career Fair is one of many career fairs that we put on throughout the course of the year. And so the All University Career Fair is an annual event that happens the 3rd week of September. It's usually the 5th week of the school year. And so for those of you that are going to be here beyond just fall 22, know that we will have another All University Career Fair happening next year about this time. In addition to that, we'll also have a virtual career fair that we'll host October 5th. And then we have, industry-specific career fairs that we host throughout the course of the year as well. So the All University Career Fair is the only event that we host annually out at Bramlage Coliseum. The rest of the events are hosted kind of in other places around campus based on the specific industries that are recruiting. And in addition to our All University Career Fairs, we also host career meetups, which are smaller kind of niche networking events with employers as well. But the short answer to your question is yes, the All University Career Fair is an annual event that we host that brings together thousands of students and hundreds of recruiters with lots of internship and full-time job opportunities all across the globe. Yeah.
So if we come in for like the
Yeah.
You have to come in with a document that is already done.
Yeah, great question. So the question was, if we schedule an appointment or drop in, is it okay to not necessarily have a perfect or full document already, or do you need to have kind of a full resume in place? And the message there is we'll take you wherever we're at and help you go from there. So part of our role is to help facilitate basically the career readiness of all students. And so every one of us comes to career readiness at a different place. And so whether you've got a blank document and don't know where you want to start, or you've got a document that you've worked on for 8 to 10 years and just want some help, we can help either one of those two things and everything in between. So come to us wherever you are, and we're more than happy to meet the needs that you're trying to fulfill as best as we can. What else? Yeah.
How early in your program do you suggest getting involved?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So the question was, how early in your program do you suggest getting involved with the Career Center? There's been research done across higher education that shows that students who get involved with career services on their campuses earlier on in their careers oftentimes have starting salaries that are higher than their peers who wait longer to get involved and utilize the career services that are available on their campus. And so, you know, I think that's helpful anecdote that's research-based, but I would encourage each of you to start early. There's never a time that's too early to have a conversation with a career advisor, and just know that obviously in the programs that you're in, you probably have mentoring faculty that you're working or researching with. And so having just more people in your hive can oftentimes be a gigantic asset to you to use while you're here. So there's never a time too early, but I certainly encourage all students, really by the time they're kind of get their feet underneath them in their first semester in a master's or PhD program, it's usually a good time to at least schedule with the Career Center and have kind of initial conversation about where you might be, because you'd be amazed at the amount of insights that are developed from our staff over working with students over time and developing industry partners, and some of the cool connections that can be provided from that relationship. What else? All right, well, I'm gonna hang out for a few minutes afterwards. If anyone has follow-up questions, I'm more than happy to have those one-on-one with you. I also have business cards that I'll sit on the table. If any of you wants to grab one of those to take with you to know how to get a hold of me, you're welcome to do that as well. But thanks a lot for your time, and I hope to see a few of you out at the All University Career Fair over the next few days.
Thank you.